April and happy November, even though it is very gray outside. But that is why it's the perfect opportunity to knit yourself a cozy, basic, simple sweater. Today I'm going to be showing you how to knit the cinema sweater, which is the one that I am currently wearing. The cinema sweater got its name from the Harry Styles song Cinema. I can't play it here because of copyright, but I just felt that it's the perfect kind of sweater that you want to snuggle up in for a cinema evening. It's a very basic, simple, top-down raglan sweater. The first sample I knitted, I am wearing right now. This one I knitted with yarns from Knitting for Olive. I held 2 strands of their merino double, and it's very oversized. The sleeves are extra long, and you shape the collar here, or the neckline, with some German short rows. And if you've never done German short rows before, don't worry. In this video, I will show you exactly step by step. It is a really simple technique, even though it might seem a little confusing at first. I haven't done German short rows that much in my life, but I've really started to enjoy them more, and it just creates such a good fit for your garments. I have worn my cinema sweater so much already. You know, I love to pair silk mohairs with merino, but this time I only went with merino, and it's so nice because it's so soft. It's like zero itchy, and it's worked on a 4.5mm needle, so that's a I think it's US 7. I have to check. I think it's US 7. I might be wrong, but I think it's US 7. So it's fairly quick to knit, and you can decide. So in the pattern, and I've actually already knitted 3 samples because as I'm filming this introduction, I have already knitted the last sample, which I'm going to be showing you in this video. So this is my 3rd sample, and this one you can see is much more shorter in body length. So this is the cropped version. I'm sort of wearing now the regular length version, and then I've also done one in a dark blue or navy blue color, and this one is the longer version. So you can decide which body length you want, and also with the sleeves you can customize that. I have made them purposefully extra long. Also have quite long sleeves, so that's something that to take into consideration when you are knitting your own cinema sweater. And I will of course pop the links to the pattern below, so you can get the pattern either at my own website at kutovakika.com, or you can also get it on Ravelry if you prefer instead to use Ravelry. I designed this sweater after I had done quite a lot of cable knit projects, because I really wanted something very simple that just allows me to knit stockinette stitch on the bus, in the train, watching TV, something that I don't have to think about so much. And this is exactly a good, I would say, palette cleanser project, and of course by yarn choices. So here, for example, in my cropped version, I used a hand-dyed merino from Madeleine Tosh in the color Horn, together with some brushed silk mohair. So it became a little bit fuzzy, but you have that texture and those speckles. So I love this. This is so gorgeous. I think I'm going to be using this so much because white is just a color that I really like, but you still have something going on. And then similarly, of course, now here you can see kind of the light color, and then you have this darker color. Also, I've never really, or no, I have knitted something in dark blue actually when I think about it, but not for a long time. And this one I've also been wearing a lot. I just finished it last week, but dark blue is, yeah, I just like it so much. I like dark blue more than black, I would say. All right, I hope you're gonna enjoy this tutorial. Again, it's very step by step, so even if you've never knitted a sweater before, I'm gonna be showing you all of the main techniques. And I want to say about the neckline. So for this sample, the neckline, I would say, is a little wider than in the final pattern because I adjusted that a little bit. I also knitted this one, I think, quite loosely, but when you're knitting your sweater, and if it looks very tight, don't worry. My experience is when you start to wear it, it will grow a little bit. So sometimes it might seem like that it looks way too tight, but again, when you block it and you start wearing it, it will probably stretch out and grow a little. The cinema sweater is completely seamless, and you start by working first the collar on circular needles, then you change to larger needles, then we'll do the German short rows, which I will show you. Then you work the yoke and you have these increases, these raglan increases here at both the sleeves and also on the back. Then we're gonna separate for body and sleeves, work the body first. I'll also show you how to do the Italian bind off. You're of course free to choose which bind off method you want to do, so you don't have to use the Italian bind off method. And then lastly, also I'll show you how to work the sleeves. There are some decreases that are just a knit two together and an SSK, so slip slip knit, which I've actually shown in a previous video, so I will link to that instead of showing it. For the cinema sweater, I would say a DKY type yarn will work really nicely. So for this one, I held 2 strands of Sunday by Sunday's Garn together. In the gray one, I had 2 strands of Merino by Knitting for Olive, and then I'll show you what yarns I'm gonna use for the sample that I will knit in this video. But essentially a DK weight yarns, that could be having 2 strands of finger weight as well, that would work really nice. And as always, I do recommend that you make a little swatch gauge before you start to check that your gauge matches the pattern. Okay, without further ado, let's get right into the tutorial. For my cinema sweater, I am going to be holding 1 strand of this beautiful hand-dyed Madeline Tosh merino together with 1 strand of Drops Brushed Alpaca Silk, which is this really fuzzy nice yarn. I think this is going to create a really beautiful fabric. I am first going to be using a 3mm, so that's a US 2.5 circular needle. This is, I believe, 60 centimeters. So that's 24 inches. So that's what I'm going to be using for the collar. All together. We're going to begin by casting on stitches for the collar, and the collar is going to be folded double, so I want to have an edge that is pretty loose and won't be tight, so I'm going to use the backwards loop cast on method for this to cast on X amount of stitches that I need. So check the pattern for your size, starting just with a slip knot, and I'm not going to be casting on very tightly, just using my thumb here, grabbing my yarn, going underneath that to cast on as many stitches as I need for the size that I'm going to be working. All right, there I have the amount of stitches I need. Now we're going to be joining this to work in the round. So I'm going to go and make sure that my stitches aren't twisted and just bring this to a round. So I have here my working yarn in my right hand, and then I just bring this left needle to form a circle so we can work this in the round. All right, I've distributed them now evenly. There's always a little bit of mucking around here in the beginning. Also, it might look that it's really huge, but when you start knitting in rib, it is going to shrink, so do not worry about this. Before I begin, I want to place a stitch marker or something so I know where my round changes. So this is our BOR marker, stands for beginning of round marker. And then we just start knitting in rib. So we're gonna knit 1 and purl 1 all the way across. Make sure to really tighten that gap. You might have to scoot up some of these stitches here. The first round is always a little bit tight, I find, but it's only the first round, and then it will get much easier and smoother. You're gonna be working the rib, knit 1, purl 1, approximately 4 centimeters, so that's approximately 1.5 inch. And then you're gonna do 1 round of just purl. So you see these little bumps here. I mean, this is optional, but this will help because then you continue just knit 1, purl 1 for an additional approximately 4 centimeters, 1.5 inches. And this collar is going to be folded double. And then this purl little bump round here really helps that to lay nice and flat. So I've now worked my entire collar here, and then I'm going to attach it just by hand sewing at the end. But you can see that this purl bump row here just really helps that to settle and lay nice and flat. Next, we're going to start working the yoke in the round. So I'm going to be switching to a larger size needle. I'm going to use a 4.5 millimeter, so that's a US 7, and I'm still using a pretty short cable, and then at some point I'm probably going to have to change this to a longer one. And I'm going to show you how to work the German short rows that is going to help shape. So this is the beginning of round marker is now at the back here, and then we're going to shape it by working flat the German short rows because that will help us get a higher back than the front, so we get a bit of shaping like that. All right, round number 1. I have here my beginning of round marker, but I'm gonna probably lose that now when I switch needles, so I'm gonna pop that away just for a second. And first, I'm just gonna exactly knit according to round 1 here. So I am working size medium, so I need to knit 19 stitches with my larger size needle now. So I just start here working these stitches. Oh, it makes a little noise. 19, okay, I worked 19, so this is now half of the back stitches, and here I'm going to be placing a stitch marker, and we're going to be placing 8 stitch markers all in all for all the raglan seams. So to have a little bit of system, I use always a pair of stitch markers that are the same color, so I can pop that on. Then I knit 2, and then I pop the second marker with the same color. Next, we're going to work the stitches that are going to be the sleeves. So I'm knitting my sleeve stitches. And then I'm again going to be popping on some different colored stitch markers to mark my raglan seam. So I place a marker and I knit 2, and I place again a marker. Now I've worked the entire round. So here I have the sleeves. You have these markers around the raglan seams. Here are my front stitches. Here are half of my back stitches. I've placed my beginning of round marker back. So you have the beginning of round marker marking half of the back stitches. And now we are ready to start working the German short rows. German short row number 1, which is worked on the right side. First, we're gonna work all our way to our marker. So that's the first marker we have. And then we are gonna increase by M1R. All right, I've now knitted all my stitches to my marker, and now I'm gonna do an increase that is gonna be a right leaning increase. So we're gonna make one right, that's abbreviated M1R. And to do so, we're gonna locate the strand between the stitches here. So that's this strand here. With my left needle, I'm gonna pick that up from behind onto my left needle, and then I'm going to be knitting this as if it were a stitch, but from the front here. So I kind of twist it, and that way I create a new stitch here. Then I slip my marker, knit 1, knit 2, and then here I first slip this marker. So I just have these 2 knit stitches, and on each side of these 2 knit stitches is where the increase is gonna be placed. So here we want to do an M1L, so make one left. So this is going to be a left leaning increase. And to do so, we're going to again, with our left needle this time, go from the front and grab this strand between here from the front. And then we're going to knit it from the back instead, so through the back loop. So we twist that as well, because otherwise we'll get a hole here. All right, we've done our increases. Then we again knit to the next marker, which is again a sleeve marker, and we repeat that. All right, I'm at my marker, so then again I make one right, take my needle from the back there and knit this. Oop. All right, I've increased 1, can slip this marker, and then I knit these 2, and then again I need to slip first this marker before I do this increase, because we always want to have 2 knit stitches between the increases. Make one L, make one left, going from the front, and knit it twisted from the back. So this was now the sleeve stitches, and now we've done the increase, and this is now the front stitches. And here we're just gonna knit 1 stitch, and now we're gonna turn the work around, which means we're gonna be working from the wrong side, meaning we're working these German rows flat. So just turn the work around. German short row number 2 on the wrong side. This starts with making a double stitch, and let me show you how to do that. So first, make sure you have your working yarn here in the front. And then this first stitch, all you're gonna do is from the left needle, you're gonna slip it to the right needle without doing anything. So purl-wise, go in and just transfer it from the left to the right needle. And now you have it here on your right needle. You're gonna grab this working yarn, take it open over, and we're gonna pull on it so that you see these two legs appear. And these are the two legs from the stitch below. And that's why it's called making a double stitch, because it kind of becomes like a double stitch. And that's just because we pull this yarn pretty tight. And that's all we're gonna do. Then we're just gonna bring this working yarn here front, and then we're gonna purl to our marker. So we're gonna purl this stitch. Then I'm gonna slip this one, purl until my marker. So this is now the raglan seam stitches. Gonna slip this one, and I'm gonna be just purling all of my stitches and slipping this marker until the beginning of round marker. I've purled all my stitches to my beginning of round marker, and this is why it's great to have a different color for the beginning of round marker, so you know where you are at. And now, next we're gonna purl all of these stitches until our first marker, and then we're gonna do an increase here on the wrong side this time. Now I'm at my first marker, and here we're gonna do an increase. M1LP stands for make one left, but now purl, so that P stands for purl. So we're gonna locate the strand here between, use the left needle. I'm gonna pick that strand up onto my left needle, and this time we need to purl this, and we need to purl it from the back loop, because otherwise, if I would now purl it like this, there's this big hole, which we don't want, so we need to purl it. So I'm gonna go in here from the back here, all the way, and bring it through, wrap my yarn around, and go all the way out again here from behind that strand, and I have made one left purl. Then I'll slip my marker, purl these raglan seam stitches, we slip the marker, and here we're gonna M1RP, so make one right P. So this time we go in from the back of this strand here between, and this time we can just purl it here from the front. Like that. And then we repeat that for the next two markers. So let's do that once more. So I've purled to my marker, I need to M1LP, take my strand from the front and purl it from the back loop. So I go in here from the back. Then I slip my marker, purl 2, again slip this marker and M1RP. So this time I go in from behind and I can purl it from the front loop. And then we just purl one, because now we're again at the front stitches, because we worked the back and then we worked here the sleeve stitches, and now we purl one, and that is German short row number 2 complete. So then we're just gonna turn the work and we are ready to begin German short row number 3. German short row number 3 again starts with making a double stitch, but now we're on the right side. So we're gonna again bring our working yarn here so we have it in the front. Then I'm gonna be slipping this stitch purlwise, this first stitch, without doing anything. We just slip it from the left to the right needle, still my working yarn there. And next we're gonna make a double stitch. So again, using this working yarn, I'm gonna pull it up so that we get these two legs of the stitch below visible. So I just pull it pretty tight so I get these two legs from the row below visible. And then we're just gonna knit all of these stitches until the beginning of round marker. I've knitted all my stitches to my beginning of round marker, and then I continue, and now we're essentially gonna repeat what we did on German short row number 1. So we're gonna make those same increases when we come to our markers. All right, now I've knitted from my beginning of round marker. I've done increases here at my stitch markers. Now I'm again, so these are now the front stitches. So I've made one here, increase, then I'm gonna knit one, And now you can see this kind of wonky looking stitch. That's the double stitch we made on the previous row. So this we're just gonna treat as a normal stitch. So we're gonna just knit all of this. So we have kind of 2 strands here, but we're gonna knit them as if it was just one stitch, like this, and then knit one after that. And that is short row number 3 complete. And then we're gonna turn around again, and next we're gonna be repeating these rows. So we're gonna be purling all the way until the beginning round marker. After that, on the wrong side rows, we then do the increases here at our 4 of these markers. And then when you come to this again, so it looks kind of wonky here, you can see that's the double stitch we made. You're just gonna purl that normally, purl 1, and then you always turn. I'm gonna do this for X amount of rows, and this is the way that we help shape the back. So just to remind you again, now we're gonna work German short row number 4 on the wrong side. We just slip this first stitch. We have the working yarn in front, and then I'm just gonna pull this so I get these 2 legs really visible. And then I'm ready to just purl all these stitches to my beginning of round marker, and I'll show you just how to resolve that double stitch that we made on the previous row, so that purl stitch. I've purled the sleeve stitches, I've done the increases here on the wrong side, and now we're coming up to that wonky stitch, so we're still gonna purl 1, and then here you have this double stitch that we made on the previous row. So we're just gonna purl all of this as if it was just a regular stitch, then purl 1 after that, and that is German short row number 4 complete. So we can go ahead and turn the work around. And next you're gonna be repeating these 2 rows essentially. You always have this beginning of round marker, and we're gonna be ending up actually here at the beginning of round marker after all of the German short rows are complete. So the last one is sort of a half German short row, and then we're gonna start working in the round. I have completed the German short rows, and I've actually also started working the body already. So I completed the German short rows. Here is my beginning of round marker. So that last row of the German short rows is just actually a half row until the beginning of round marker. And then I've just started to work in the round. So you do increases on every second round and then just 1 round of knitting. And the increases always happen, so you can really see it clearly. All these, the raglan seams, so these are the 2 stitches, and you always do a M1R, so make one right on the right side of the stitch marker with at the raglan seams, and an M1L, make one left, always on the left side of your stitch markers. So you do that every second round, and you continue for quite a bit, a little bit depending on your size. And because this design is quite oversized, there's quite a few rounds here worked, but let me just show you now. And now I have my stitches on 2 cables just to be able to show you this a little bit better. But you can see here now that the German short rows have created a really nice shaping so that the front is lower than the back. And that is what you can achieve with the German short rows. Here you can kind of see a little bit, this is gonna smoothen out once I block this, but that is it. So now you're ready to work the yoke, and then we're gonna separate the sleeves and the body. After you've worked the complete yoke, so I have now worked all of the increases according to my size, it's time to separate for the body stitches and the sleeve stitches. So I've actually gone ahead and already put the first set of sleeve stitches here on just a stitch holder, and then I've cast on some new stitches here under the arm, and then I've worked, so I've started working from my beginning of round marker. I've worked up until my sleeve stitches, removed the markers, then I've transferred all of my sleeve stitches just onto a stitch holder, cast on some new stitches here, and I'm gonna do that now for the second sleeve, so I'll show you how to do this. So this is something that we'll do for both sleeves. So knit up until these stitch markers for our raglan seams, and then you can go ahead and remove the first marker. Knit these 2 raglan seam stitches, they are gonna belong to the body, and go ahead and remove the second stitch marker. And then you're gonna either grab some scrap yarn, I'm gonna grab my stitch wire, gonna pop that onto my needle, and then all of these stitches onto the next marker I am going to put on hold, as we like to say. So I'm not gonna be working these stitches, but I'm gonna work these later on. So all the way up until I reach, again, my raglan seam. So I have my first marker here. So that's how I know that's all of the stitches I need for my sleeve. And I can pop my stitch marker off. Secure that. Then we're gonna go ahead and remove this marker. And now I have my working yarn here where we left off. We're gonna cast on some new stitches for the underarm. So I'm working size medium, so I need to cast on 10 stitches with the backwards loop method. So I just grab my yarn and use my thumb, go over and under, and bring my needle in. So that is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there I've cast on stitches for the underarm. And then I'm just gonna pick up and continue to work in the round. Then I knit 2, and again we can go ahead, and remove that marker, and then just knit until I come to the beginning of round marker, which I have here. So now the body is just worked straight, so there are no decreases done. Just before the hem we have some decreases, but otherwise you just work in the round until your desired length. And in this pattern, I've actually included some different lengths. So for this one, I'm gonna work this cropped length. I also wanted to show you how to attach the collar. Even though the pattern usually says to do this as the final step, I'm actually gonna do it now because I want to try it on and see how it looks. So I'm gonna show you how I like to sew and attach the collar on the inside. I've left quite a long tail in the beginning when I cast on stitches, so I can just go and pop that tail onto a blunt tapestry needle. And then since we have this purl bump edge, it's really easy to see where to fold. And one thing to keep in mind is to make sure that these stitches align. Sometimes when it happens, if you're not paying attention, it might get crooked on the inside. So to just make sure that they really line up. For this edge, you could also knit it together at the beginning. I know some knitters prefer that. I often find that it gets a little too tight, so I often like to do it just afterwards instead by hand sewing. So now I have my bump edge there, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and attach it by quite loosely sewing it here on the inside and making sure, oh, there's the yarn, making sure that these lines really align straight down. And again here, make sure to not tighten it too much. Obviously this is also a matter of preference, but I at least have had sometimes collars that have been too tight and it's just not very comfortable to wear. All right, there you have it. So you can see I really made sure to align all of my stitches, and now it looks really nice and you have a squishy collar. I have worked the entire body now, and I've done the cropped length version. So I've done the body just straight, then there are some decreases here before you do the hem, and this one I've worked with 3mm needles, US 2.5 needle, and then I've used the Italian bind off, and I'll put the timestamp right over here, so I'll show that because you do the same for the sleeves, and I've already actually gone ahead and worked one of the sleeves with the Italian bind off, so you can find that there. After you have completed the body, it is time to work the sleeve, and like you can see here, I've already worked one sleeve, so this one is worked in the round, and you have some decreases here along the underarm that we're going to be working, but otherwise let's start with transferring these stitches onto a smaller circular needle, or then a longer one if you're going to use magic loop technique. To work the sleeves, first you need to transfer all of the stitches that you had on hold while working the body onto your needle. So I'm gonna do that. Just transfer all of these first onto my needle. Okay, I have all my stitches on my needle, but we do need to pick up some stitches here for the underarm because otherwise we'll have a big hole there. So we're gonna grab our yarn and then start to pick up stitches right here at the middle of the underarm. So the middle of underarm is approximately here, and I'm gonna use my needle to just pick up stitches. So I'll go in through here with my needle. I have my new yarn here, leaving a bit of tail that I can weave in. Then I just grab that onto my needle and I'm gonna try to get this through here, like that. So I have now picked up one stitch. And then I'm gonna do that for 5. I need 5 in total here. So I'm gonna do that, 2, 3. Then I often like to pick up one here, kind of in the gap here. So picked up here from the stitches that we cast on and then from the gap, just so I don't get a hole right there. And then we're just gonna knit all of our sleeve stitches. So with this new yarn, just knit across all of the sleeve stitches. Now I've knitted all of my sleeve stitches, and now again I need to pick up some stitches here from the underarm. So first I go here, kind of from the gap, I pick up 1, and I need again 5 in total. So we have 1, 2, 3, and check the pattern for your size because it doesn't necessarily, not all sizes have the same amount. 5, and then I'm gonna pop a stitch marker here in the middle so that I know where my round changes. And that is it. Now you are ready to work the sleeve in the round. And as you can see here with my first sleeve that I have already worked, there are some decreases happening here. And now it will depend on what size you're working. So the pattern will say with how much distance you'll work the decrease round, which is a very simple one. You just knit 2 together and do an SSK. Always, I think, 1 stitch from your marker, so it's very easy. I will say about the length of the sleeve for this design, they are a bit extra long. So I definitely recommend trying it on while you're getting, to a decent length, just to check that you don't get too long sleeves. I have pretty long arms and I really wanted to make this very cozy. So just as a little note here. So the decrease round will always happen again, depending on what size you're working. So always when you come to the stitch marker, you're knitting 1, then you're gonna knit 2 together, knit all the way around until you only have 3 stitches left before the marker, and then you do an SSK. And I'll put links below to videos where I've shown those. They're pretty standard decreases, but I will put definitely links to another video where I show exactly how to do those decreases if you're not familiar with them. Otherwise, I wish you happy knitting, and I will see you once this is done. Here I have now worked one of the sleeves complete, and I've done all of the increase here along the way, and then I've switched to smaller double pointed needles for the rib, and now I'm ready to start binding off. Let me show you how to use the Italian bind off method, which is a method where you thread your yarn onto a tapestry needle and you sort of sew all of the stitches to bind off. Here I have worked the body hem, so you use the same one for the sleeves and for the body hem, and you can see that it creates like a really nice, almost seamless transition, and it's also very stretchy. So that's something which is the benefit of the Italian bind off. So not only does it look very pretty, it's also very stretchy and nice. After I've completed the cuff rib, or the hem rib, then I've gone ahead and cut my yarn, and I've left a tail that is about 4 times the length of the circumference of the sleeve. For the hem, I've done the same. And when you're going to use the Italian bind off in the round, you first do a little preparation step, and then there's always kind of 2 steps depending on if you have a knit stitch first or a purl stitch first. And then we always gonna treat them as a knit and a purl. So a pair that starts with a knit stitch and then you have a purl stitch, or you have a pair that always starts with a purl and then a knit stitch. But before we get into that, we have one preparation step, and remember, this is only done once. First, we have a knit stitch. So first preparation step number one of the preparation step is to bring your needle purlwise through this first knit stitch. So you bring it from the right to the left purlwise and pull so that you get all the yarn through. And tighten it a little bit. Then we want to come in between the first and the second stitch, but we want to do that from behind. So I'm going to bring my yarn and my needle to the back of the work, and then I'm going to go between the first and the second stitch here. So between the first and second stitch, and I pull through. All right, and that is preparation step done. Next, let me show you the step that you're always going to be repeating when you have first a knit stitch on your right needle and then a purl stitch. So this is for a pair when you have a knit and a purl stitch. And a good little rule to remember this is when you have a knit and a purl stitch, so that starts with a knit stitch, you're always going to go through both stitches knitwise. Both stitches knitwise, and you always start with the second stitch. So let's do that. So first, we just bring the needle through the second stitch by going through knitwise, pull it all the way back. Like that, and tighten a little bit. Then I bring my yarn to the front, and then I go through my first stitch, again knitwise. And then we are ready to slide this stitch off. All right, that was the knit and purl stitch sequence. Now we have a purl stitch first and then a knit stitch. So this time we have the yarn here in front. We're first going to go in purlwise through again the second stitch first and then the first stitch. So first the second stitch purlwise, and then I go through the first stitch again also purlwise. Once I've done that, I can slip this stitch right off. Okay, and then we start repeating these two steps. So now I have a knit and a purl stitch. Then the first thing I need to do is I need to bring my needle between the first and the second stitch so that I get my yarn here between them. And then I'm gonna bring again my needle knitwise, first through the second stitch, and then lastly through the first stitch knitwise, and I can slip that off and tighten a little bit. Next we have a purl stitch. That means I'll go in purlwise, first through the second stitch, and then purlwise through my first stitch, slip that right off. We have a knit and purl stitch. Again, bring your needle between the first and the second stitch, pull the yarn all the way through the front, and go in knitwise through the second stitch, through the first stitch, slip off. We have a purl stitch next. That means we'll go in purlwise through the second and purlwise through the first. So you can see these are the steps you're going to be repeating all the way through until we get to the end, and I'll just show you how I like to weave in my end for a really invisible seam. Now I only have one purl stitch left on my needle, so I'm going to go in through that just purlwise one last time, and I can remove my needle. And now you can see, there's like a little bit of a gap here between. So what I like to do is I find this first knit stitch column, and I will go through here. I will try to find sort of that first leg so that this gap sort of disappears like that. And it's pretty seamless. Maybe I'll go in one more time. Adjustment. So this is kind of, you have to be a little bit creative here. I'm gonna go in through here and in through there, these knits columns, and pull once more a bit tighter to try to make this as invisible as possible. And then just weaving the end. I usually like to kind of break the yarn, go through some stitches here on the wrong side, and go in a few different directions just to make sure that I get it really secure, and that if somehow, for some reason, it would start to come undone, it won't start to unravel my knit project because I have a long tail that I've woven in here. One Italian bind off complete. Really stretchy and really nice. Very, very satisfying indeed. Ta-da! Here is the final result, my cropped cinema sweater. I am of course now 6 months pregnant, so it looks even more cropped than probably normally it would be. I really like that it's a little bit fuzzy, still has these speckles. It feels like such a comfortable and just like a knit that I know that I'm gonna be wearing so much. So yeah, I worked the cropped version. You can get the pattern. I'll put the links in the description below, both for the pattern to my website on kutovakika.com or in my Ravelry shop. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and maybe you now dare to attempt German short rows if that's something that you haven't tried before. I would also love to see your cinema sweaters if you do decide to go for it. I mean, this is such a basic design, so you could of course add stripes and colors and anything you want to it. So then you can use the hashtag cinema sweater when you, for example, post on Instagram. It's always just so much fun to go over there and just get inspired by all your lovely yarn and color combinations. For finishing, you can definitely wet block your cinema sweater. For this one, I actually only went ahead and steam blocked it. So I just soaked a kitchen towel and then put that on top of my sweater, and then used just an iron just to get a lot of steam. So I didn't press very hard, but just enough so that there gets steam, and then I stretched out just the sleeves a tiny little bit, and also the body lengthwise, just to get a little bit more length to cover my bump. All right, that is it for this tutorial. As always, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it valuable. I do really like creating these tutorials, and I also have the cinema sweater pattern in many different languages, so I hope that's gonna make this pattern more accessible to a lot of knitters out there. And I will see you over on Instagram maybe. I'm over there, over at Kutovakika. You can come and say hi. I share a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and otherwise I will see you in the next video. All right, take care. Bye.